Happy last Tuesday of August, everybody. Happy last Tuesday of August. Look at Pearson messing up everything. But this is the Rig on Wheel show featuring MVT. And as usual, we got Pearson in the house. So I am Camille E. Gaines. I am your host. And we got, of course, Pearson, the
MVP would be fine.
Yeah, the MVP. But the VP, he's our MVP, but he's the VP of recruitment over there at Mesilla Valley Transportation. So we are your home when it comes to all of your recruitment needs, your hot jobs, your insights, your news, everything, right? So we are here to get it started. Let's go. You got everything pulled up.
Well,
good news, bad news, everything, right?
We seem to be in a state of purgatory at this moment for the election to get over with. So I can tell you one of the things that kind of stinks right now. If you look at the spot market, we continue to be in a pendulum. Goes up 2.5%, down 2%, up a percentage, down 3%. We seem to be in that. We had a lull here. Drive-in was down 2 cents, now sitting at $1.90. Flatbed down 3 cents, now sitting at $2.31. Reefer down a penny at $2.36. The forecast looks somewhat refreshing that over the next 2 weeks it'll go up. That's generally going to be impacted by Labor Day. I believe it's coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Which is my birthday week.
Oh, well, congratulations
happy
on
Virgo.
That. Yeah, happy birthday. That's kind of bad. And we've seen this too. We've been talking about we want to see fuel be somewhat stable. It does sound good when fuel's going down, and it has gone down. Diesel prices went down 3.7 cents to 3.65. That's down 21.4 cents since mid-July. That's encouraging for people as they get fuel, and on the fuel surcharge being a lagging indicator. But again, it's a sign that the industry is kind of in a standstill at this moment, waiting for the election cycle to get over with. You know, we've talked about it's going to get better. It's going to get better. We've been having those discussions now going on about 18 months, though. It's been a long time. So as an industry, I think some shippers are anticipating it's going to get tough. You have a lot of shippers going and signing direct contracts early on here. But with that said, we kind of need things to stabilize. And as we've talked about numerous times on this, be it Wall Street, Main Street, or anything else, even Vegas, no one really knows who's going to win the election at this moment. We have views and opinions. The challenge is for most individuals, we have strong beliefs on who we want, who we don't want. Most businesses, truth be told, don't really much care. Most businesses at the end of the day want to know what that playbook's going to be. How do I adjust? How do I game plan based off of what the next 4 years will be like? And the challenge right now is that no one really knows that answer. So it feels like if you look at the freight market along with fuel kind of talking about the overall economy, the freight market is a barometer for the economy right now. They've readjusted some of the hiring numbers over the last 6 months. So that definitely impacts it. We are not, quote unquote, in a recession at this moment, technically, but it is a soft freight market at this moment. So as a driver, you know, we've talked about this for the last 2 years, but as a driver, the biggest thing right now that I can tell any driver is watch your pennies, let the dollars take care of themselves, live cost effectively, efficiently. You know, it's okay to maybe eat a meal at the truck stop once a week, but probably don't want to be eating out every single meal.
Absolutely.
And don't go chasing after who has the highest cents per mile. If you're going into a new job, look for stability. What is my average week going to be looking like? I don't want to know about your top 10% or your bottom 10%. What's the average week going to look like? And what does the entire body of work look like? And more specifically, when you talk to any company, you should be having that conversation of how many direct customers do you have? Because with where the spot market is right now, if a company tells you, hey, we do a little half and half brokerage and customers, that should not instill confidence at this moment. You really need to be with a company that will be able to provide you with the stability of contracted direct customer freight. Just to talk about how wild the fuel price is, the national average price is down 82 cents compared with the same period last year.
That's a lot. That's almost $1.
Again, that sounds good. And during this election cycle, we've talked about the fact that, 3.5 years ago it was $1.50. And that does sound great when you consider, though, that it was $1.50 because we were in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
When fuel prices are cheap, it's also an indication that they don't have a lot of confidence in consumer spending, which makes up 70% of the market, of the economy. So keep that in mind right now. It is cool that we're down 82 cents, but there are economic reasons why that's the case.
Absolutely. And it was almost like you read my mind, because what I want us to talk about in the next segment is strategic planning. So this segment that's coming up, I want us to talk about strategic planning when it comes to owner operators or carriers, because it's kind of, when we talk about this, it's going to be very similar. We're going to be like talking about level. And then after that, I want to talk about it when it comes to drivers.
Yeah.
Because drivers have to have strategic planning as well, because you are your own business. Of course, the conversation will be different. So it'll be a different segment, but it's still, you have to have planning, especially in times like this. We have to be frugal or mindful of our spending.
Yep.
Okay, so definitely, Kayla, if you could take us to commercial, because when we come back, we definitely want to dive into it. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, so as promised, what I want to go over, Pearson and I talking, we do have a nice segment coming up when we talk about the car.
Yeah.
A new fella won. But what I want to talk about is the strategic planning when it comes to carriers or owner operators.
Yeah.
Okay, so depending on whether you're an owner operator and you have, if you are yourself driving, or you have 1 to 10 or 11 trucks, because you're typically not considered a fleet until you have 12 or more trucks.
Give or take, yeah.
And then, going on from there, and I don't even know when they start calling people carriers after that.
Really, I know you're considered a large carrier once you get to about 30 million in annual revenue, which in actuality is not what we consider. None of the top 100 carriers are at that level. They're well above that.
Right.
But in all honesty, once you get to where you're doing 30 million in revenue a year, you have quite the robust business at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like things are moving along, right? Okay, so the first thing I want to address is cost management. So you always talk about the pennies and the dollars, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, as we talk about with our own fuel economy, once you get the customer, once you get the equipment, there's a whole litany of other things you have to do to be fuel efficient, cost efficient. One's fuel. 2 would be compensation, and it's not being cheap with a driver's pay, but it's setting a driver up for success, but where their fiduciary interest is that the same of the fleet owner. The perfect relationship is where the fleet owner and the driver both reap the benefits of profitability. Some call it profit sharing, but it really, and it's where our industry struggles because we just try to think of miles equal dollars, but that's not from a compensation point when it comes to drivers. If you are a small fleet and you have drivers driving the truck, you simply want their pay to be representative that if you have a good week, they had a good week.
Right.
If you had a bad week, the driver's valley should not be as deep as the person that owns the truck. That's where you take the risk of being an owner-operator. But on the flip side, it's driver pay, it's being fuel efficient. A lot of people get into the owner-operator game because they love having a truck that's not governed. That is the wrong reason to be an owner-operator.
Yeah, that's definitely the wrong reason.
It is.
Because you see a lot of that. I see a lot of it on social media all the time. Especially when we write about the blogs, when Emma is writing about the blogs and everything, and he'll say, I'd rather get out of the way and all of that. We had a driver on LinkedIn really talking about that. And that's the difference between a professional driver and a driver.
Yep.
You know, right there. When you are owner operator and you are just mashing down on the accelerator, so much more goes into it. You're talking about your maintenance. Well, just go back and think about when you are starting to train your 15 and 16-year-old or 14-year-old when it comes to driving. There's more to driving a car. Let's get out of the truck for a moment. Let's think about just us training our son or daughter. There's more to driving a car than just getting behind the wheel and pressing the accelerator and the brake, right?
Yep.
So it's the same thought pattern when it comes to a truck. It's more to that. So if you are just always on the accelerator, we're thinking about maintenance, we're thinking about gas, we're thinking about so much. If all you're doing is on the brake, Camille, then you're going to have all brake issues.
Yep.
Okay. So it's the same thing with the maintenance and things like that. So it's cost management with that part of it. Looking at Pearson is calculating numbers when we're talking about the cost management, because that it all adds up. Trust the process. That's the reason why I tell drivers all the time, do not jump into it 6 months in and you want to be an owner operator right away. You need to go in, fill out the company, first of all, talk to other owner operators, but actually educate yourself in not just your trade, but in the business part of it. Because it's more than just jumping behind the wheel and driving. You're actually having to maintain this. You're in your own small business. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, let's think about fuel. And let's just think about that major fact. So your average truck runs about 120,000 miles a year. About 120. There's people that do 160. There's people that do close to 80. But 120 is the industry average. Now let's say you average about 6.5 miles a gallon because you want to go 70 miles an hour down the road. That means over the course of the year, you're going to do a little over 18,000 gallons of fuel. You're going to spend about $68,000. Now let's say you go 65. If you go 65 with that same type of mileage, you're going to purchase a little over 17,000 gallons of fuel, and you're going to end up paying about $63,000. There's about a $5,000 difference in that 5 mile per hour difference. That's simplifying it. You technically can get better fuel economy than that, but that's just on face value. So the question you have to ask yourself, is going 5 miles an hour quicker down the road going to make you $5,000? In most cases, it won't, especially if you're relying heavily on the spot market. It may generate an extra couple $1,000s over the course of the year, because delivery times, origin, destination, all that's already figured when you accept the load. So you're really contingent on a number of factors. That's $5,000 you can keep in your pocket. So as an example, if you're a single truck owner, or let's say that you own 10 trucks, 5,000 multiply that by 10, that's now $50,000 in savings. So that's the question here, and that 5,000 matters. It seems like a small deal, but it's the thing that when you become an owner operator and then move into that fleet owner, having 10 trucks matters significantly, because $50,000 is a lot of money. And especially where you might be in this time in this market where you're on razor thin margins, that extra $50,000 on a 10 truck fleet is a lot of money that you now have flexibility on. So that's the thing, is thinking about that. Do I want to go 70? Do I want to go 65? And I know you will have drivers that will go, well, now I'm blocking up traffic, speed limit 70. You're not. You're not blocking down traffic. I know there's some folks, I know professional owner operators that have done this for 40 years, that they never go above 60 because they're just obsessive compulsive about their fuel economy. Yet they have no tickets or accidents in that 40-year career. There is nothing statistically that says, do you annoy some of the four-wheelers on the road? Potentially, absolutely. But there is no safety reasoning to go fast. There's just not. So that $5,000 is a very small sacrifice on speed in order to reap that, and it multiplies the more trucks that you have. Think about it. You have to have that conversation when it comes to equipment. A lot of times, a lot of owner-operators or fleet owners go, well, I want to get older equipment. I want to get older equipment because, you know what, I don't have $200,000 for a new trailer and a new truck. Yeah, but you gotta have a robust P&L statement and understand where that comes into play. If you're spending 20 plus cents on maintenance per mile, that adds up quickly too. Sometimes you can't afford but not to get a new truck. Or a newer truck where you still have warranties. So as a fleet owner, you got to look at the equipment and decide, do I want to have new equipment or do I want to have older equipment? If you have older equipment and you now have drivers, you have to deal with increased turnover. So now if you have 10 drivers, but you now have older equipment, let's say that one or two maintenance issues along the way come up over the course of the year and the driver's not going to tolerate it with the truck sitting in the shop and says, I'm out. You now have to spend about $10,000 to $15,000 to replace those two drivers. Now you have $30,000 in cost on top of the maintenance cost.
And that is the number one reason why drivers leave companies. It's not because of pay, it's because of equipment.
Yep. And the domino effect of issues that it causes. So that's the thing, is you got to look at the equipment and decide what equipment's going to work best for me, both from an efficiency standpoint, as well as, quite frankly, the fuel economy and the maintenance standpoint. So these are the things that, as an owner-operator, I'll tell any owner-operator, fleet owner, have a P&L statement, understand your P&L statement. There's a company based out of Denver called ATBS. ATBS does a really nice job. They mainly do accounting for small fleets, but it gets into that P&L statement of understanding, hey, do you need newer equipment? Do you need older equipment? What is your maintenance cost? What is your cost as it relates to the drivers out on the road? So it's fuel, it's equipment, and then you get past those two things, you have to aggressively go after direct shipper relationships. Now, you have an advantage as a small fleet that a Swift or a Schneider doesn't have. Even I struggle to compete with it. As a small fleet owner, you're able to maintain a relationship that I can't compete with. You are able to go into a customer and go, no, I need you, and you are going to get a high level of service because you're valuable to my business. And I'm going to talk to you daily, and we're literally going to create a partnership here. I can do that, but I'm doing it through intermediaries and multiple people in the company because of size and scale. As a small fleet owner, you have that. So if you can maintain the driver base, the mileage and fuel economy, and then the equipment, and then get relationships with direct shippers, you generally are going to weather the bad times and reap the benefits of the good times.
I definitely agree. It's really nothing else to say behind that. I definitely agree with that. Let's go to the next point, because that cost management is something serious. I wrote down a point because it's going to tie with the next segment.
Well, when we get into it, I will say this: when we get into that discussion on the next segment, these are things that company drivers should also be thinking about.
That's the reason why I didn't want. That's the reason why I didn't want to say it, because I was like, oh, I want to keep it for the company driver part of it. So also, I do want to. We talked about the fuel, that, but I do want to talk about the optimizing routes. And the proper tire pressure. That is very important. The proper tire pressure and stuff like that. First of all, that deals with the maintenance, but that also deals with the fuel. That goes back to the fuel. If your tire pressure isn't where it's supposed to be, that messes up the fuel as well. And then when we talk about idling time.
I will say that They can be somewhat complicated, but APUs are unbelievably valuable. And in particular, look, we're going to hold on to a truck generally on average about 3 years. It varies a little bit by niche, size of company, et cetera, but generally 3 years, just mainly because of tax purposes more than anything else. But with that said, that APU and having your driver comfortable with an APU and training them properly on how to utilize the APU. A lot of companies have lost faith in APUs because it becomes a bit of a maintenance issue. The key is understanding your APU and how to utilize it to its fullest potential. And I'll give you an example. The APU does not cool the truck. The APU maintains the temperature of the inside of the truck. And if you use the APU like an air conditioning unit, eventually it's going to break because you're putting a lot of pressure on the APU unit. So one of the things is properly training your drivers on how to utilize the APU and get the most out of it. If the truck's 90 degrees inside and they go in and crank up the APU or go through the wrong process to crank it up, it's a lot of pressure. On the flip side of it, if they utilize the air conditioning to get it to the temperature that they want and then utilize the APU to maintain the temperature, that APU should last 3 years easily. But that gets into utilizing the APU, investing into it, understanding how you're going to save money through fuel. Generally, if you idle overnight in a truck, you're going to use about 10 gallons worth of fuel. Again, that's towards no mileage. That truck's stationary, but you're using 10 gallons. Where with an APU unit, you're generally only using a gallon and saving yourself about 9 gallons of fuel usage. So on the flip side, if you train your drivers, you get the right APU unit, you train them on how to utilize it, you maintain the APU unit, it becomes very valuable to you over the course of the year, especially as you multiply trucks.
Now, what I want to ask you is, how does MVT? I'm really big on niches. Is how we get into the riches, but I also am wanting to talk about diversification within your niche, right? But I know with MVT, and I still believe in that. And I think MVT does do that, but I want to know how, or explain that to our audience, because I know at MVT we don't deal with the reefer and the flatbed and things like that. So how does MVT deal with the diversification? Because that's important at a time like this.
Well, you can be all flatbed and still be diverse,
right.
Or you can be all driving and still be diverse and be open to opportunities. So the key thing is you can do a million different things in trucking, and don't come into it go, well, I'm not doing this. It will get you into trouble. Now, with that said, you want to be experts in very specific areas. So as an example for MVT, we do 500 cross-border moves a day. We are recognized as one of the leaders of cross-border moves. However, we do stuff internally, intra-Texas, as an example, where we have people running between DFW, Houston, and San Antonio. Has nothing to do with cross-border, gives us some flexibility, though, and allows us to get into a lot of customers to solve their problems. So let's say that you are a small fleet of, let's call it 10 trucks, and you're based out of Tulsa, and you like to run down to Laredo and come back up. Your ability to not be locked into that and have drivers, hey, if a better opportunity comes along that we have with a direct customer, let's take advantage of that opportunity. So you may not haul hazmat currently, as an example, but having all 10 of your drivers have hazmat endorsement has value. So when that customer comes along that says, hey, we'll pay you 20 more cents per mile, but you on our freight, you're going to need to move hazmat. That 20 cents per mile and being in a position where you can take advantage of that immediately ends up being very advantageous because you're adaptable as a carrier. Your drivers end up reaping the benefit, hopefully, because of it. You end up reaping the benefit because of it. That ability to pivot quickly while still maintaining, hey, we're a dry van carrier, as an example, or we're going to specialize in this, means a lot. Now, that doesn't mean that, hey, if I do local Tulsa, now all of a sudden I'm going to ask all my drivers to go to Canada. That might be a bit of a... But with that said, that adaptability to move quickly and pivot becomes really important, because as you come out of a recession, it doesn't come back smoothly. It's not like a graduated line that goes up. It does this sort of thing. And so your ability to adapt and adjust and pivot ends up being pivotal.
And I'm writing down notes because I want in the next segment to link it all together with the carriers and owner operators, which right now I am using that interchangeably. And then with the company drivers. Okay, so now let's talk about the technology. Technology, we know or I feel, let me say, is the cornerstone of strategic marketing. So right now, with it being such a competitive market, being with technology and being innovative and leveraging the technology isn't just an option, it's a necessity right now. Okay, so investing in your load boards, freighting, the match apps, everything. So let's talk about the technology. And I know we talk about that in the commercial with Joe and everything, but let's have at it with you.
So I'm both old school and new school at the same time. Mm-hmm. As a small fleet, as an example, having truck-specific navigation in the truck is very valuable. We think we know better. We have to utilize technology to help us in where we're going to gain the best fuel economy. Mm-hmm. With that said, at the same time, having drivers that can read a Rand McNally Atlas, and because those are not 100%. At some point, there's going to be construction. There's going to be road closures. Your ability to go old school and pull out a map and know how to get where you're going becomes very valuable. But on the flip side of it, you want to have a navigation system that's going to help you with those directions. Looking at the statistics, not just looking at am I getting the best fuel economy overall, but understanding your lanes on where you're getting the fuel economy. Is it going a certain direction? Is it the time of the year? Understanding the variables that cause the results to happen as they do ends up being very valuable. The other part of that is our brains are somewhat limited, and the more trucks or drivers that you add, you've got to stop doing it mentally and allow technology to get involved in how you dispatch and how you load plan, pre-plan. And there's a lot of vendors out there that do that, but that's one of the things as you become a fleet owner is you really want to look at, hey, how can I delegate this out to technology when possible? Mm-hmm. Because at some point your brain will fail. I don't care if you're Rain Man and you have some mental power. You will eventually reach too many trucks, too many loads, too many drivers that you're going to be able to do it all up at the top of your head. Taking advantage of that technology to where you have an actual system in place that's not 1950s where you got a board in the background and you're just placing numbers. This is not like running a fantasy draft. You have to have it in the computer systems.
And this is the part that I love right here, where the technology meets the human aspect, building relationships. If you utilize your technology properly, then building relationships becomes easier and more efficient.
Yep.
Because it allows you the time and the capability, right? The capacity to be able to spend more time with building the relationships versus tradition. Tradition is for the people that are dead. Okay.
It is.
And that's the fact. So if you utilize technology that gives you more capacity and makes it more efficient, so you can build the relationships, and that's what you always talk about. We are in the people business. And when you were talking about building relationships, especially for the smaller carriers, when it comes to the shippers, I got my notes here and keep going back. Building the relationships when it comes to the shippers, the brokers, for the reliable partnerships leading to consistent loads, or dedicated accounts, dedicated loops, dedicated customers,
well, and
all of that.
I think the thing is you want to be extremely detailed and methodical about this. If you go back 5-6 years ago, where Pilot got brought to the class action lawsuit they had, where they weren't giving the discounts that they claimed they were giving, where you go to the fuel pump, and the number one factor is 90% of the carriers that they were being accused of not giving the discounts they advertised to were 50 or fewer trucks. Because the assumption from Pilot was, or not Pilot as a company, but 2 or 3 very specific people in the organization that are no longer employed there now, was that if you have less than 50 trucks, you're not really being able to track it. So you don't know that you're not getting the discount. So what ended up happening is the assumption was that as a small carrier, you weren't going to take advantage of technology to go, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing as a small fleet owner, you want to be intricate in detail, A, so you can run efficiently. B, if you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting from a vendor, you can call it out and spot it and get the money that you are owed. And C, at the end of the day, nothing's a surprise to you. You know why you're succeeding or why you're losing and able to adjust accordingly. Because that shouldn't happen, because that's an indictment of those carriers as well, where they went 3 years of basically, instead of getting 40 cents off a gallon, they were getting 20, and we're none the wiser for years on end, that money adds up very, very
That's
quickly.
a lot of money.
In the case of this, it was close to $1 billion overall.
That's a lot of money. Somebody should have went to jail.
I believe they did, technically. At least a couple of them.
That's good news.
Yes.
That's some very good news there. But that's the thing. We are literally in the people business, and you can't underestimate that. And when you utilize that technology, it just takes a load off. You see what I did there? Made it funny. But literally it takes a load off, and it allows you the time and the energy just in anything. Because I feel like that's how it is for us as a recruitment agency, but just as a carrier, it takes a load off, and you're able to do what you do best.
Yep.
And that's build relationships. And that's what you're supposed to be doing, because that's where your revenue comes from. It's building relationships.
Yep.
Right? If you're an owner operator, even if you're the one that's driving the truck, what you do best is not driving the truck, because you are an owner operator now. You're a small business owner. What you do best is building relationships. And if it's not what you do best, that's what you need to educate yourself on, because that's what you need to do best. If it's not, you will be going out of business very quickly.
And look, being a people person does not mean that you have to be a cheerleader getting the troops motivated from the truck. It just means that you're making people want to work with you, that they enjoy working with you, that they value you, and that they think dealing with you is a win-win scenario. If you can create that, you'll have repeat business, and you'll turn that one load customer into hundreds of loads over the course of years.
Yeah. So to finish up on this particular segment, I want to point out what Pearson said about the financial planning. Can't stress that enough for any business. We all get caught up in that. And then I am big on this. It doesn't matter if you are an owner or not, the continuous learning, because everything changes by the time you finish learning it and you're an expert. It has now changed. Yep. So we always have to continuously learn. I want to know what your thoughts are about that. So definitely let us know, and let us know if you need us to dig more into that, because we definitely can do an entire segment on that. So if you could definitely, unless there's some questions, if you can go to commercial, and we will go to our next segment, because I'm really excited about how to tie the company drivers piece to this.
Mi nombre es Miguel Castro Mercado. Tengo casi 4 años trabajando en MVT y soy owner. En este momento estoy corriendo para el estado de Virginia, Pensilvania, New Jersey y de vuelta. Yo recomiendo a MVT para que se vengan a trabajar aquí diferentes personas, diferentes que tengan sus necesidades laborales, porque en cuestiones de trabajo hay mucha carga, hay mucho trabajo. El equipo es nuevo, ya depende de uno mismo cómo mantener ese equipo y dar el rendimiento posible. Y tengo entendido que a los choferes de compañía, por ejemplo, el día de hoy se entrega un vehículo para el mejor chofer del trimestre, y hay bonos por fuel, hay bonos por diferentes trabajos. Entonces es recomendable que vengan a trabajar. Sí, les comento que corrí 5 kilómetros, 390 metros en una carrera de la Coronado High School, de la banda de música. Éramos 191 corredores. Yo llegué en el lugar 109 general y en el segundo lugar de los de mayores de 60 años.
That was an awesome commercial. That was a good segue for what you would think I play in that commercial, but I didn't. Kayla, it's all Kayla. She's really good at that. But Catherine, Caitlin is the daughter I wish I had. Catherine said, thank you for this approach with the drivers. No problem. And then Greg said, would they need to take hazmat classes? So let's jump into that. Yes, when it comes to hazmat, it's an endorsement. So yeah, you need to train on that, and you take a test at your DMV for that. It's an actual hazmat, and you put it on your license.
And it's one of the things we've talked about here on this end. So as an example, MVT doesn't require hazmat. We do move some, but not a great deal of hazmat opportunities. But we talked about just because you don't use something today where it might benefit you in the future. Mm-hmm. So if you live out of Houston, as an example, I'm a big advocate of having your TWIC card. There is so much freight that comes in and out of the port mm-hmm. here that you may theoretically in your career not use it, but it gives you opportunities. It creates a value proposition that you offer the marketplace. If you live in El Paso, having that hazmat endorsement, you may not use it, but your cost is about $75 on it. You go ahead and get it, and it opens up a number of other opportunities to you. And what we do, as an example, is we have 5 drivers that live in El Paso, but they have a passport and they go up to Canada.
Yeah.
And they end up reaping a huge amount of benefits. It's not our specialty, as an example, but they had their passport. We were able, hey, we had this unique opportunity to come up. You're going to see about a $25,000 a year increase. Do you want to do this? And they did. They were able to take advantage of it because they had their passport. So again, if you live out of Houston or any market that has a large port of entry, TWIC is a very valuable commodity. In Savannah, Georgia, your non-TWIC drivers average about $60,000 a year, where your TWIC endorsed drivers going in and out of the port average about $96,000 a year.
That's some good change.
Significant difference. Changes the job significantly. And most of those are home daily jobs out there. So the key is investing in yourself. Again, you may not use it today, but when that opportunity becomes available, you have that adaptability to turn on a pivot and take advantage of the opportunity.
So I want to dive into this. That was going to be my second point in this segment, but since Greg brought it up and Pearson started talking about it, I want to talk about it. I have a YouTube video that I recorded probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I need to definitely update it. But I always call this part of it is being bulletproof. You always want to be, you know where I was going with that. Did you?
No, I don't. I'm waiting to
see what it is. You know, bulletproof, they do have bulletproof coffee.
They do.
Keto coffee. It's not that. But bulletproof, what I term that is making yourself marketable. That's what it is. You want to make yourself marketable. If you are a truck driver, be a truck driver. You need to have all of your endorsements, whether you're using them right then or not. You never know what is going to happen. So when I used to, on the phones as a recruiter, I would hear drivers saying, well, companies are not even paying you extra to have a hazmat anymore. You don't know what is going to transpire. They might have a load. You're able to take that load, and that load pays more. There might be another account that you're able to take. Let's not think about, this pays 5 cents per mile, or this pays 10 cents per mile. That is a mindset. I'm trying to be politically correct. So that is a mindset that is not good.
Well, I'd argue that
to say, right?
Oh, it is. Okay. But I'd argue it may be a conversation of load versus no load. So it may not be that you made extra on the load per se. There's customers out there that maybe 10% of their freight's hazmat, but they don't know what the load's going to be until they physically get it and get ready to present it to the shipper. So with that said, they expect you to have hazmat because there's always that chance that there's more than 1,000 pounds and you're going to need the hazmat endorsement. So it's not always a question of, did I make more per mile? It can be the difference often between no load versus load. Your ability to have that flexibility. And I would argue this not beyond just a truck driver, but any profession. Yeah. You should be able to ask yourself, what is my value proposition in this relationship?
Yeah.
And it may be as an employee, it may be as a vendor, a customer, whatever the case may be. If you can't clearly define, this is my value proposition in this relationship, you should feel real insecure about your job security.
Absolutely.
Be it good times or bad times. And we talk about this a lot, the difference between a truck driver and a professional truck driver. Those are two very different things. It's not that hard to get a CDL. It's really not. You can go to one of the meat market type schools, spend a couple weeks in there, get out on the road, and bam, you got a CDL. That does not make you a professional driver. It does mean you're judged differently than the four-wheeler on the road, but you're not a professional yet. Your ability to go, hey, this is why a carrier would want to work with me, makes your job easier too. Because when they come to you and go, I'm looking for a job, you're going to go down the check mark of boxes of what are your wants and needs, but also what does the carrier want and need in that process. And so when you're talking to somebody, well, there's 2 carriers that might like you versus, well, there's technically a dozen carriers that might like you.
And literally, that's how it is. When Raven, Nemra, DeBoer, any of the recruiters that we have, and you have a driver that is what we consider bulletproof, it's so much easier to. So in our portal, 10th Street, we have things flagged. Well, we'll have it where we have our bulletproof drivers that have a certain amount of endorsements. They're more marketable. So we'll have at times more seasonal carriers that come that they need more specialized drivers. And it's just mainly the drivers that have the endorsements. It's just that. And a lot of times these particular carriers, they don't need these drivers all the time. It's just certain times that they need them. Let's also talk about right now where it's a soft market. And this last segment, we were talking about diversification. So I'm being extremely honest, very intentional, and very Virgo with you at this moment. I'm a business owner, so I'm being very intentional. I only want to hire people that serve multiple purposes. It's a soft market. So I don't need Rig on Wheels to employ or contract someone that can only do one thing that makes no business sense at all. That's not profitable for Rig on Wheels, nor will it be profitable for that staff person or that contract person or the entire team. That's unfair to the whole team. So as a carrier, that driver that they want to bring on and keep, because I tell recruiters I tell carriers all the time, retention goes both ways. It's about not just keeping a driver, but it's keeping a driver that you want to keep. The purpose is keep the driver that's worth keeping, and it's about a value proposition.
Well, think how often, let's take Phoenix, Arizona as an example, and you have a driver in Phoenix that says, I never go to California. The value proposition for a driver out of Phoenix for a number of carriers is the fact that I can hire you out of Phoenix to have you go to California without having to hire out of California, which has its own list of difficulties from a carrier's perspective. You are literally right off the bat going, 50% of people should not hire me. Like that's you're eliminating your value proposition. Your value proposition is your geographic location, and you're nullifying it on the spot because there's only so much eastbound freight that originates out of the Valley of the Sun. There's only so much of it. So you have already pigeonholed yourself into one area of it because you've shut down the other end of it. Your value proposition has decreased substantially. It may be the driver that lives in DFW, and I only run Oklahoma, Texas. I won't ever go anyplace else. And that's cool if you find that job. But if you are strong on that, I am only going to run these areas, you are blocking yourself off. It may be, you know what, I don't want to glow in the dark. I don't want any type of hazmat ever. Well, not everything's that hazardous. It could be Windex. It could be paint.
It could be water.
It could. So the fact of the matter is you're literally going, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. And there's a certain point there that you may find the job you're looking for. But if something doesn't go just perfect and that job changes or an opportunity presents itself and you can't take advantage of it, you can't complain 6 months later when you're like, well, how come the guy next to me is making $20,000 more a year? You've decided that. You may not have realized it, but you made that calculation of I don't do this and I don't do that. Here you are. We talked about it a little bit. We have people that make 6 figures running the Western U.S. They make that because, hey, I'm willing to run some pretty tough areas. It's a little stressful, but I get weekly home time and make 6 figures. That person that lives in the same market that's making $40,000 less, and that's not a bad driver per se. But they've made the determination of what's important to them. They can't come back 6 months later and go, I'm being cheated. Well, no, you decided on this pathway.
And then I can distinctly remember, and of course with the recruiters that work for Rig on Wheels, they talk about this, but I want to talk about my experience when I used to be on the phone as a recruiter. We'll have people in Pennsylvania or Jersey, like literally they are in Northeast, and they'll say, I'm not running New York. Come on, like, get off my phone.
Yeah, you've taken away your value proposition.
Right, there's no reason. You are next door to New York. It's nothing that I can do for you. Or you'll have somebody in Texas saying, I just want to run Texas. Okay. And they have an interstate license. Okay, we need you to not have that on your license. Well, if this run is only Texas, that's okay. Well, no, because when somebody says you're just going to run Texas, you might touch Oklahoma just a tad, and you might touch Louisiana. Well, no, then that's lying to me. I for the sake of the sponsors and MVT, I won't say what I want to say, but what I will say is I get off the telephone because I'm an advocate for professional drivers, not steering wheel holders. I don't want to deal with a driver that this is their D and E and F choice. I really want to deal with the drivers that is the A and the B and maybe the C choice, not the ones that this really not really what I want to do, and that shucking and jiving and all of that. That's too much for me, and it's too stressful, because this is a great career for men and women that really are serious about making good, honest money, not for jokesters. And I'm not even a kid person, okay? So I don't want to deal with that type of behavior. And that's kind of what happens. So I want to go over these strategic things. Something else that last week on LinkedIn, and this is what led me, when Pearson was talking, led me to write this down, because it was a driver. He had some great experience, and he was talking about him and his cousin, and him either wanted to team or whatever. He seemed like he had a good record and all of this type of stuff, and also had some endorsements, right? Oh, so I had already had this information, and I was about to send the information over to my two lead people, Raven and Nemmer. As he kept talking on his post, and it was a couple of other larger third-party recruiting companies, two other that works with MVT. Neither one of them decided they was going to work with him, and I'll tell you why. He started talking about the governing of trucks, the cameras, and all of this stuff, and what he wasn't going to do, and the governing of trucks, and why that's bad, and he'd rather get out of the way, and it's not his problem about worrying about profit of the company. Well, that part of it is how you get paid. So if you're not worried about the profit of the company, that first of all makes you an unsafe driver when you're thinking about just speeding down the road, because that's what it was talking about, the governing of the trucks, speeding down the road. There's no thing about, oh, you need to get out of the way of the trucks and all of that type of stuff. No statistic that ever says this, no study, no nothing. That makes you an unsafe driver, that increases the insurance, that messes up the maintenance of the truck, that messes up the fuel. It's so much that goes into that. So that decreases the profit, which in turn is going to decrease as a driver, your pay, and then affect your team people's pay, right? Right there, I decided I'm not sending this lead to Nemmer. I am not about to waste my recruiter's time with somebody that is it's not that necessary. And I know the other two didn't either.
Yep.
So another recruiter did that just started, and we all have to learn. Bless her heart. But that situation, even though he said he had a clean MVR, and that probably was a lie, but let's say he did have a clean MVR. That right there let us know as three seasoned third-party recruiting agencies that was willing to talk to him, that let us know right there that he was not a quality driver.
Well, I'm going to say this. Imagine you're on a football team. And so you have a game plan going into the game, and all of a sudden one of your teammates announce, "Oh, I don't care if we win or lose. I'm going to do my thing.
I'm going to do my thing."
You probably don't want that person on the field with you. I will say this. You brought up a good point. It wasn't the main point you were making, but one of the points you brought up a couple points ago was on women. And what I mean by that specifically is not women, but we've talked about this as though it's drivers being persnickety and I don't do this and I don't do that. The other part of this is there's a big part of the driver base that has fear that I can't do this, or I shouldn't do this, or I don't have what it takes to do this. My experience working with a flatbed company is we always had the challenge of hiring women, because women traditionally have not looked at themselves as flatbedders. Yet some of the best, I remember a woman named Felipe, and she was fantastic. She was about 5 foot tall, 140 pounds dripping wet if she was lucky, but a hell of a flatbedder. Could go out there, strap, chain, tarp with the best of them. Don't know how she did it, but she was good at it. So it's not just drivers being persnickety. It's also having that confidence in yourself of I'm going to invest in my career and I'm going to reach for something higher. It could be that you are a minority, that you're a female, that you don't come from a trucking background where you don't have family in trucking and you're the first in your family to get into the industry. Do not let yourself hold yourself back from being successful.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that have fear of success. We talk about fear of failure a lot. There's a lot of drivers and people just generally in life that are afraid to reach for that next level. And as we had that conversation about becoming an owner-operator and then ultimately a fleet owner, as a company driver, you probably have goals in your career, or you should, of where you want to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Part of that diversity in your skill set that will make you marketable to other people is you getting past yourself and not having a fear of doing something different. We always try to keep it simple, and we always try to keep it just clean and not get too far, kind of like the turtle that doesn't want to stick itself out of its shell just a little too far. Do not be your own worst enemy in this stuff, and that happens a lot, where we are our own worst enemy. We hold ourselves back. And then when we look back over the last 5 years and we didn't really progress the way we thought we were going to, a lot of times it falls on us. We have been our worst enemy in that process. So don't pigeonhole yourself into doing that one thing in this industry. Give yourself the opportunity that when that opportunity comes, you can seize on it.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, let's go to commercial and then do the hot jobs before we run out of time.
Absolutely.
Because I ran my mouth. All righty. Welcome back, y'all. So we are about to go into these hot jobs. You want to do one of the regular jobs or the fancy job?
Well, we got four divisions I want to talk about today, specifically for teams. We do hire solo drivers for these, but let's talk about some team opportunities today that I want to focus on. So one of the divisions we talk about regularly on the show here is Division 110. We need teams out of Albuquerque, El Paso, or the DFW marketplace Really good length of haul on this. Our teams are averaging about $3,600 to $4,000 a week. So this is a nice thing that it could be a husband and wife team. We've had brothers, we've had best friends from high school, and all sorts of walks of life on this. So if you are a pre-made team, you live out of Albuquerque, El Paso, DFW, or now including Nashville and Memphis, wonderful opportunity. We'll have an orientation near where you live. A lot of drop and hook. With our teams on this division, they average about 90% drop and hook because we have local drivers in these markets that do the last mile deliveries. So you're able to rack up some tall miles. Well, in the process, getting weekly home time, again, about $3,600 to $4,000 a week. Division I team tends to be a really good opportunity for people out of El Paso, DFW, Nashville, Memphis, and Albuquerque. One of the ones Kayla can bring up next is we'll go on to Division 200. Division 200 is not currently available to solo drivers. However, if we have teams and you live out of the El Paso marketplace, really cool division, get through every 5 to 6 days. So what happens is you go out, you do the loop here. A solo driver could do it in 5 to 6 days. Teams tend to do it in about 3 days because of that drop and hook. So you do that triangle, come back to El Paso, spend a night at the house, go out again, do that round trip again at 3 days, and then get your home time. Ends up offering you weekly home time to do your reset at the house, plus some time in the middle of the week. Division 200, if you are a pre-made team, again, averaging $3,600 to $4,000 a week, talk to your recruiter. We do not have openings for solo drivers on 200 right now, but if you're a team, we can definitely open this up to you and give you an opportunity on Division 200. Similar to that, we have a division called 300. Again, same type of triangle. By the way, on Division 200, we're hiring El Paso, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces out of that. Division 300, we currently have openings out of El Paso. Another great opportunity for teams where you go to El Paso, you start in El Paso, and you either go to Laredo, San Antonio, Houston, or DFW, pop up to Colorado, and make your way back down to El Paso. A lot of drop and hook. Generally, as a team, you're going to do this round trip twice. It should take you about 5 to 6 days as a team, and you'll get back home. Again, if you live in El Paso, we have Division 200 or 300. Division 200 for teams tends to be the busier division of the two divisions, but something as a team you'll want to talk to your recruiter about. And lastly, we talk about Division 329 a lot. It's a smaller division in terms of geographic footprint, but on the flip side of it, it's a lot of drop and hook. We utilize our solo drivers and our local drivers. So if we look at Division 329, Kayla, we're hiring presently out of El Paso, Houston, DFW, San Antonio, or Laredo. This gives you a lot of opportunity for a lot of drop and hook opportunities. The length of haul shorter, but we utilize those local drivers and solo OTR drivers to make the final end deliveries on this opportunity here. Again, this is where we have most of our divisions that are on this, despite the geographic footprint being smaller. We end up having very consistently about $4,000 to $4,200 a week. Again, if you are a pre-made team out of El Paso, the DFW area, Mount Vernon, San Antonio, Laredo, or Houston, really nice opportunity for team. I may not have listed a whole bunch of opportunities here, but with that said, we also want solo drivers as well as teams in other markets as well. So if you live out of markets like Phoenix, Albuquerque, Denver, Salt Lake City, Portland, Oregon, El Paso, Lubbock, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, San Antonio, Laredo, DFW, Houston, Memphis, Nashville, St. Louis, Jacksonville, Florida, or anywhere really in the states of Tennessee and Kentucky. We have a lot of exciting opportunities for you as well. So by all means, call that number 281-968-3100, 281-968-3100, or visit rigonwheels.com. Don't want to forget to mention the last thing that we have going on. We have home daily opportunities out of Columbus, Ohio. So we talked about this last week. We'll talk about it this week. We have day shifts as well as night shifts. One's about home time and quality of life. The other one's still got a nice quality of life, but it's really about nights and weekends. So our day shifts are Monday through Friday. They're going to average start times around 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. So you get out of work middle of the day. Often you'll be home in time to see your kids get home from school, have your weekends off. You're going to average about $1,200 to $1,400 a week. All no-touch freight. We're mainly servicing Lowe's, 80% of Lowe's customers shop at their stores on the weekends. They don't want our trucks there on the weekends. So we have a lot of opportunity that if you live in about a 35-mile radius of Groveport, which is on the southeast side of Columbus, we have opportunities on that. Orientation, we take over the account on September 14th. Orientation, it will be a one-day orientation either on the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th. Going into that in September. Now is the time to apply. Do not wait till September.
Yes.
If you wait till September, it will be too late. All the positions will be filled. I can guarantee it. The interest level has been high. We've talked to about 400 individuals last week that all had interest in the positions. So you're going to want to make sure to jump on that. The other one we call XDT, and that is the night and weekend division. So a lot of times we will run freight to other distribution centers, special orders. Special orders do occasionally have to go to stores. So we'll have runs at more of a flat rate, cover the Columbus metro area, may run up to Romulus, Michigan, and then come back down into Columbus, or Hebron, Kentucky, and then come back in there with some backhauls occasionally. Those positions generally start at about 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at night, get off about 3 or 4 in the morning, does work weekends. That position, though, pays up to $1,750 a week. So it's a home daily opportunity making up to $91,000 a year. All this freight is no touch. It is Lowe's. We don't need necessarily hazmat in this case. I encourage people to get hazmat, but you don't need it on this account. So if you're interested in this, again, call 281-968-3100. That's 281-968-3100. If it's the Columbus opportunities, let your recruiter know if you're interested in the store position, meaning that you want to work Monday through Friday with an AM start time, or if you're interested in XDT. That tells them that you're focused on the daytime shift or the nighttime shift. You got to hurry, though. You're going to want to get that application in this week.
Yes, and I want to thank Catherine and Greg. That's what I was doing when the jobs was happening, because I was responding back to you guys on LinkedIn. And before we go, we do want to say congratulations again to Ivan Sanchez. Definitely won that new car.
Yeah, first time winner of the new car.
Yeah, and he had a perfect CSA score as well. I saw that on Instagram.
Yep, he was just under 12 miles a gallon. He was, I think, 11.9, so he was very close on that end. Good driver with us, a younger driver, hadn't been with us that long compared to some of our vets that won the award, but a really professional driver. Excited to see him get that car from Royal at our driver appreciation. I know in September we'll be coming up to where a lot of companies do their driver appreciation, but we do it quarterly. It's a chance to meet more people face to face, and it's always exciting to beat the rest of the industry to a driver appreciation event.
Yeah, and I know all the recruiters are so excited when that happens, because Josue was telling me it's such a vibe and all of that. So
it was cool.
It's really nice to even see the staff get all involved and appreciate the driver. So that's good too.
Yeah, when as a professional driver, when you can get in your brand new car and we have pyrotechnics go off, at that moment you're like a rock star.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So we want everybody to be safe. We see you guys on the 3rd. So that's the date after Labor Day, and that's my daughter's birthday, Patrice Camille's birthday. All right. She's not a kid. She'll be 21.
It's still cute.
She's still cute. She looks 13. But so we'll see you guys next week. Be safe and everything, and we'll see you next week. Bye.